Welcome to another episode of the Office Altering Hire and Empower with Molly McGrath podcast. If you're a returning listener, welcome back. If you're a first-time listener, hopefully you'll become a long-time listener. As always, I'm your show host, Molly McGrath, founder of Hiring and Empowering Solutions and creator of this revolutionary podcast. You can check us out at hiringandempowering.com. I am so excited about today's guest. My goodness, this conversation about mental health in the workplace is just booming. If you do a Google search, go through a TikTok search, any of the hashtags, it is time. It is time in the indefinitely within the legal space. So I'm so excited, Casey, for you to be here. Tell our listeners a little bit about you, because I think your backstory will do such great justice for this.
So I am a 3-time cancer survivor, and I worked in corporate America at the time, and I do not anymore, mostly because of a toxic work environment.
This is going to be for the rest of the year. Our mindset person who's coming in, our mindset coach is coming in October, is also talking about the 4 pillars of creating a mentally healthy workplace. And she worked in corporate America too, and she left because of burnout and all that. So tell us a little bit about, 3-time, and you're young, right?
Yeah. I was 31 when I was diagnosed. I was at my quote unquote healthiest. And it came out of what seemed out of nowhere. Look, in hindsight, there were a lot of factors that I think led up to that. But it forever changed the trajectory of my life. And I had a stroke during my treatment, which definitely changed the trajectory of my life. It's a wild story. And the cliff notes are that it was over 5 years. I had a stroke during 4 months into my treatment, had to relearn how to use my entire left side, had multiple relapses. We ended up writing a letter of compassion to the FDA and to a drug manufacturer to get a immunotherapy that was not approved, just access to it to see if it would work. It was our Hail Mary, and it worked. So yeah, it was very much, I was planning to die.
And I love, for anyone that goes to your website, the Happier Hustle, which we're going to talk about the naming convention, the work that you're doing as well. But if you go to the Happier Hustle, like the vulnerability, the real, the raw, the good, the bad, the ugly, your pictures and everything that you share on your homepage, like talk about tenacity, talk about mindset. And I know we're going to talk about this today, what it took for you to overcome at such a tender young age, like the power of belief, the power of mindset, and what it takes. And today we are going to talk about the secrets of overcoming it. And I love that. Any challenge, all challenges, because so often I'll hear these statements like, I can't deal, or that you don't understand. It's so, especially in the legal space, you don't understand my practice, you don't understand my attorney, you don't understand. And we have all this real true challenges and pressure and everything coming at us in our job. And to your point, a lot of times it really is a toxic environment. I talk to law firms every single day. And like you, and you're such an inspiration for me, I'm getting louder and bolder about this and talking about how it's not okay, because we have this saying of is what it is. It's high stress. We have to serve our clients. We have to make money. We have the bar association. It's all this justification of why we get to really be completely stressed out and burned out and then go home. And then, one of my aha moments was, where my kids basically got the stressed out, crappy version of me.
Yeah. And I've been there too with my partner of coming home and just unloading on him for no reason. Like, well, I mean, there is a reason, work, but he didn't do anything wrong. I misdirected all of my anger and my emotion at him.
Yes. And for the business owners and the entrepreneurs listening to this, guess what happens? So then we have this limiting belief and this justification. It's very hard to keep people. It's very hard to retain employees. People don't want to work, blah, blah, blah. All this bullshit we tell ourselves. And it's to Casey's point. You come home and you are physically ill. You are responsible for the energy you bring in a room and you leave in a room. So you're coming home typically late, typically exhausted, typically starving, typically all the things. And what is for a truly, truly compassionate partner, their response is quit. Like,
Yeah.
especially after day one of you coming in saying this, let's not talk about 6 months of this, 6 years of this, where they're like, then you're left with an ultimatum. You either have to choose me or work because you're destroying our relationship at home.
Right. And I did that for 10 years
Wow.
and through cancer and through cancer. Like, I don't like, what was I thinking? I don't know. But
Yes. Well, you're not alone. There are many people in this law firm admin boot camp. There are many people that are listening to this that are going through health challenges. Either they are, or maybe their spouse or their partner or child, God forbid, they're going through divorces, they're going through death, they're going through disability, they're going through children that are in college and high school and middle school and elementary school that are suicidal and eating disorders.
yeah.
We have all of it. And then going to work in a law firm where we have attorneys that are dealing with their own stuff and the court and all the things, and it's just compounding. So I
Right.
love that this conversation today is about how to get through it. And I love, talk to us a little bit about the naming convention of your business because you're the founder of the Happy. So you have tried, tested, and proven. You've been through the ringer and you have created proven strategies to conquer obstacles, set boundaries, embrace change, and unlock your inner resilience, not in a place where it is heavy and hard and competitive. So talk to us a little bit about like why the happier hustle, because I love it in this hustle culture, especially for online, when you're online and you have a digital and visible platform.
Right. And I think that's any high stress job too. It can apply to that. So growing up my entire life, my grandmother, who is my dad's mom, a internment camp survivor, she would always tell us as children, just go be happy. Do what makes you happy. Like always. Like, I mean, this was like ingrained in us. If it doesn't make you happy, try something else. Like it was always about finding this elusive happiness for her. And that just stuck with me always. Like, find your happiness. Okay. Well, what does that mean though? Right? Like, I don't know what that means. As a kid, you don't know. You're like, I go out and play. That makes me happy. Um, and then bringing it back to like that hustle of like that's what I felt like I was doing in corporate America. I was constantly just hustling, hustling, hustling and overworking and stressed out and just like I was the kitty cat on the ledge on the poster, just trying to hang in there. And
Great vision.
then yeah, and then I read a quote from Brene Brown that said, "You either hustle for your worth, I think I'm going to butcher it, or you walk with your story or something along those lines." And I was like, oh my God, I'm like, I'm hustling for my worth. I'm like, I need to change that. So then
Very,
it became the
very common.
happier.
Yeah, very,
Yeah.
very common within and Michelle, I turn off your video. You don't have to be here unless you want to on video or anyone that joins. I know you're working in the background and things of that nature by all means. But So I love this conversation. I know we're going to get into the weeds about it, but in the legal space, in the professional space, happiness is not a word that's heard. Now, we have a team-centric culture. We have core values. We all the bullshit, like the terminology that I always say, it's great, like the plaques the positive quotes you have behind you, but they're not, those are in your bones and bloods. Most people, law firms in particular, businesses will have these core values that will communicate things like family first. But then somebody's getting fired or judged because they left 8 o'clock at night. They weren't available at 2 o'clock on a Saturday. So is it really and I'm really on a mission to transform this in the legal space. No shame or blame or weaponizing to a business owner, to corporate America, to anything, because we were all handed the rule book. And so the rule book's outdated. It's not working anymore. And so, in a place of happiness and defining what your happiness is and getting really clear in that, and then really giving you the empowerment for you to identify it, name it, and then navigate through the suck. And as you transform and how to get to that place and communicating it, like, I'm not happy is one thing, but I'm not happy because boom, 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 boom. I'm working 80 hours a week. I'm stressed out. My family really is telling me to quit my job. And these are the pieces. I'm overworked, underpaid, and etc. And what I train in the program is then give proposed solutions. And I know you're going to walk us through that on how to conquer obstacles, how to set boundaries, and give us a framework for that. But you come with a proposed solution, so it just doesn't feel like this blanket puke. And then your business owner who hasn't been equipped, they're not trained in psychology, they're not trained in mindfulness and all these things. So for you to really understand that I'm burned out, I'm in a toxic environment, and maybe the toxic environment really isn't that toxic, or maybe it is, but for you to be able to have the confidence and the language to speak your truth, and then be the change agent and say to the firm, this isn't working out, attorney. This isn't working out, business owner. You're in back-to-back meetings. You're in your CEO mode. You're in your visionary mode. But I see and hear the rumblings all day long on the floor. And here's my recommendation. We have to change the way we do things and how we do things, because this model no longer works. It's mental health, it's addiction, it is burnout, it's quitting and all that. And that's not going to change now that people have access to the work that you're doing. I see your stuff on social media and what you're doing. I see so many people like you in your young, tender age, that you have the confidence to name it, to speak it, and to try to transform the industry is so incredible. And so for people like you, meaning a lot of we were employees and we feel like our job is keep our mouth shut and do what we're told and suffer in silence. Now, hopefully the people listening and the people that work with me and are in this program, that's not the case. I'm really trying to empower them to find their voice. So I know you really truly are a trailblazer. And so would you walk us through like the part of conquering obstacles, boundaries, embracing change? I know that you have some wonderful exercises that we're going to give to people and downloads on your website and things of that nature, but really I would love for you to tell people to, number one, the secrets of overcoming it, because there's always an it, right? There's always an it everywhere, and how to get through it and be able to have those self-soothing and self-governing and self-regulating skill sets to get through it, because there's always going to be an it. And I hear over and over again, then I'll stop talking and get off my soapbox, but I constantly hear once we get through moving offices, once we get through,
Mhm.
changing CRMs, once we get through the upset of losing an attorney, once we get through, and there's always going to be a next it, right?
Right. Yeah, the challenges don't stop ever. They're just new and they're different. And those obstacles all can be solved. Like think of it as like a puzzle. And I always think like when you do puzzles, you're actually supposed to turn it upside down and not look at the picture and just look at the pieces and the edges. So like how can we overcome it if we're looking at it the wrong way? So it's just thinking a little bit differently on like we can solve all of these things and we don't have to wait to do it and mitigate one after another. We need to change it now before the next it comes, right? Like we need to start thinking about how to solve the problems before they become problems because then they aren't problems. They're just another problem or something to solve and something to work through because nothing's ever going to be perfect the first go around. It's going to take trial and error and but it's got to start before you're ready to do it.
Mm.
Otherwise, it's just sitting there hovering and the it just sits and waits.
I love that. I love the visual of the jigsaw puzzle, looking at it the wrong way, turning it over. So, step one is conquering those obstacles, right? Taking a look at it. And then, as if I hear you right, it's like one at a time, taking it,
Mhm.
putting it here, chipping away at it versus looking
Right.
like this global picture.
Right. it's like the marathon like mentality of like we don't focus on the end, we focus on each step and mile to get there. It's breaking it down in bite-sized chunks. So like if the goal is XYZ and it's way over here on the right side of the picture, what do we need to do to get to the right side of the picture? Like what work the problem backward. That's always what I say. Like, what's the obstacle? Okay, well, let's work it backward. How do we get to this obstacle to solve it? Right. So sometimes not even just like we think about the it too much versus the step to get to it. And breaking that down in bite-sized chunks of like, okay, so now we know the steps. Can we break that down even further into like who's handling it? When are we handling it? And how is it going to happen? And knowing along the way that those steps that you're creating might have to be adapted and might pivot and might change along the way. Doesn't mean you're not going to end up solving the puzzle. Just means like you just need to maybe you try a different piece before you get to the other piece again.
As you're talking, I'm thinking of this in two different formats because we tend to compartmentalize our life, right? So as you're talking, I'm like, you're even talking about survivorship. You're even talking about
Mhm.
your process through what you do in your work of
Yeah.
getting people through cancer and to be able to return to a new normal and becoming stronger, happier, healthier. So when you're even saying like look at it this way, you're talking about even when you're handed a 3-time cancer diagnosis or we're handled this big business problem, the strategy is still the same because what I love about what you're saying is everybody is dealing with X, Y, and Z at work, whether you're the business owner and the attorney or you're the employee, because there's always a trickle down effect. And then we're all dealing with something at home, right? I mean, literally, there are people in this program that have their kids right now, they're 12-year-old children, daughters that are away in eating disorder clinics
Mm.
are people in here that have children that are dealing on a daily basis with suicide. There are
Mm.
crippling depression. There are people that in here that have children with special needs, that high functioning special needs. So when I'm hearing you talk about this, yes, this is a business conversation. It's a business group and things of that nature, and it's lawyer, but we all have our things at home, going through a divorce, going through whatever. I always say, you know, when people say these statements like first world problems, I'm like, time out. The human heart is a human heart. So if you are sitting in Ethiopia and your biggest challenge is where's my next meal coming from, or you are sitting in the depths of New York City in a law firm and you just got handled with a cancer diagnosis, or you just got handled with your child calling you and they got arrested, or suicide watch, or what have you, the human heart feels the same way at the end of the day, right? It's a situation is very, very different. But when you have that crippling anxiety, when you feel completely paralyzed with fear and stress and anxiety and feel like there is no way to overcome this, that's why it really makes me angry when people say first world problems. I'm like, the human conditioning and the human heart and spirit are, it doesn't matter where you're sitting and the situation, right?
I agree. And, you know, I always think about, we always focus on what we can't do, but instead trying to focus on what we can do. And that was like the baby steps in between. It's like, what can I do today? Because eventually you're going to get to the end result. But what can I do today? Can I move the needle today? It's not what you can do tomorrow, because that doesn't matter. And what you did yesterday doesn't matter. Like, what can you do today? Even if it's 5 minutes, like, you know, I always looked at, even with my health journey, like, what can I do today to help my team beat cancer? Because I am participating as much as they are. They're giving me everything they can and doing everything they can. So how can I help them? I woke up every day, I walked every day, I ate as best as I could every day. I participated just as much as they did.
Meditation, your mindset, you took of
Hmm.
care of every single piece of it. It's not just the root cause with the chemo or radiation or what have you, or even looking back when you left a toxic environment, which, by the way, there are so many studies. Was it? No, it was you. You told me this. Tell me about that study from the Cancer Institute about the direct correlation between trauma and stress and
Oh,
cancer. I think that's worth repeating.
yeah. So it's actually from the ACE. So it's the Adult Childhood Experience Institute that's been around for 30 plus years. They've been studying trauma and the effects of it. And the two statistics that are so blatant you cannot ignore are that if you've had a childhood trauma, you are 97%, or I'm sorry, 78% likely to be diagnosed with a cancer in your life. And if you've uh, had a recent cancer diagnosis, if you look back to about a 2 year period, you are 97% likely to have experienced some sort of trauma.
Wow.
The
Wow.
statistics do not lie.
They don't. And, you know, now there's so much awareness coming around trauma. And I think a term that another term I really don't like is this blatant term of stress or
Mm.
overwhelm or what have you, because to your point, and now people talk about toxic work, and well, we're not toxic. We treat our people nice. We say good morning and what have you, but like there's so much passive aggressive conversation, and that I think I can't wait for the studies to come out, and I know they're starting to be there in regards to the workplace and the definition, because there is a lot of mental abuse occurring in the workplace, where especially in the legal space, where you know the greatest superpower an attorney has is that they're trained to believe nothing, to be trained skeptics, to look for constantly the negative in the problem, and where people are lying and things that nature, whether they litigate it or not, in regards to that, and they don't realize how they're doing that with all their relationships. It's very difficult to turn it on and off, especially when it arrives, this situation that is super heavy and hard. And then, like you said, all their subconscious trauma comes out in the way that they react, not respond to their team members and things of that nature. You let the goal is that people don't have to keep leaving. And the goal is that we can really change this mindset and this language around toxic work environment, because I think people like have that, just like abuse, right? People like abuse it, they think physical abuse, they think things that everybody has their definition. Well, it's not that bad, so that's not us.
Right. 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 And and we don't operate in a vessel where we can drop everything at the door and walk into a workplace with a clean slate. Like we bring our stuff with us. Like you mentioned, reactions and stories in our heads and how we treat others. We think we're doing it right, but we're bringing all the baggage with us every single day, every single conversation.
We are. What's the saying? Wherever you go, there you are. And so, one of the things I'm really training team members and attorneys alike to name it. When when you walk in and you see someone, if you're really present, which is if you're not present and you don't know, and you find out that somebody got diagnosed with a cancer diagnosis, or they are going through a divorce, and you're just hearing that, and it's been 2 months, 3 months, 2 weeks, what have you, and you didn't notice it because you didn't have valuable eyes for them. You weren't present. You didn't pick up on their energy. You're like, wait a minute, Casey, you're not yourself. What's going on? I notice,
Right.
what have you. If that's not commonplace in your workplace, it's an indicator you have a toxic work environment. You're not
Yeah.
present. You're not available for your team. You don't see them as human beings. You don't have space and grace for what's going on in their life, etc. And that's one of the things I teach in the program, is during their daily huddle for them, when they can get and have available eyes and be present. And you show up on Monday, then you show up on Tuesday, and then we're like, Casey, time out. What's going on? You're not yourself. I see your eyes. I see your face. I feel your energy. What's going on? And so often people will be like, Bob just asked for a divorce. He just left the kids and I. We're like,
Yeah.
okay, here's the deal. You're going to therapy. You're going to the acupuncturist. You're doing whatever. You're taking the rest of the week off, and we got your workload. Okay. And so here's the deal. And then we're going to talk when you come in on Monday about what's next and what we can do to help you with the kids and the things and the that and what have you. Right?
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. And it happened to me while I was going through treatment. I went back to work way too early and I felt pressure and sh guilt to not take more time off or go to a treatment for cancer that I was still going through while working. I felt like I couldn't take that time off, and it was kind of unspoken. You're here, you're back at work. You should be here and back at work, not going to an appointment because you need a blood draw or a treatment for chemo. And it was like I was made to feel like I couldn't take time off to do that, even though my health was at risk. Like it sounds crazy in hindsight, but in the moment, I was like, okay, I'll try and take as much time, less time off as possible. I'll work through while I'm sitting there going through treatment, working because of the pressure and the just the toxicity of that environment when they should have been like, yeah, if you have treatment today, just don't come in. Like it could be that easy. And they just
Right.
made it harder.
And here are your goals. Here's your job description. Here are your goals, what you up, and have a conversation, a banter, a think tank about it, and saying, okay, great. Here are your top goals. You have these 10 manners. You have these, whatever, social media, weekly social media posts, what have you. It's okay, especially in this day and age with automation and scheduling and platforms and things of that nature, where it doesn't have to be like chained to your desk. yes, and saying, here are the goals of the job description of what we need done this week. When do you feel like, oh, great. Okay, I have treatment today. Usually I feel good on treatment days. Some people do. And they're like, I'm going to keep going, but I need 2 days after or whatever.
Right.
Knowing your body, knowing how you process it, and things of that nature. So I just love that. So number one is really conquering the obstacles, taking a look at the big picture. And then I love just, you all think about the puzzle, think about the jigsaw puzzle, turning it upside down where you don't see the picture and chipping
Right.
away at it one by one. Talk about boundaries. Number two.
I love boundaries now. I didn't have them before. Clearly, I was working way too much, and there wasn't a lot of, it was a lot of gray. It wasn't a lot of, I didn't know, like for example, I didn't know that I could say no to work events, like especially outside of work hours. Like we did a lot of charity events. I didn't know I could say no, I don't want to go to this one. Didn't know that was a thing. So not only was I working 10 plus hours a day, I was going to charity events and all of these other functions outside of work for work because I didn't realize that I could say no. And you have full permission, unless it's part of your job description, to say no. And that's a boundary of like, my time outside of office hours is my time. I don't owe you anything. You don't owe me anything. That's not in the job description, and having boundaries like that, just being able to say no, I never had before.
I love that. And even in your personal life, right? If you're going
Mm-hmm.
through treatment and giving yourself again this space and grace for healing during that. I love this one around boundaries because it's really when you say saying no, communicating that and verbalizing that. First of all, just even that word no. One of the greatest things that my coach taught me long ago is no is a complete sentence. Because most people will say no, and then it has a but after it, and it has all this justification. And then that's where things go sideways. So getting really clear on that. I love that you use the example of outwork networking events at night. How about this? Again, when you are communicating and you are aware and you're connected and you're paying attention and saying, like for Casey to be like, all right, guys, like I'm an extreme introvert. So I'll use this example for law firms. Most paralegals by and large are introvert. I always talk about most people either like paper or people. Like you're either
Mm,
like front stage, sometimes a combo of both and what have you, but introvert, extrovert, those are other terminologies. There's all these different assessments, Myers-Briggs, Enneagram, all that. But at the end of the day, when you're in communication, again, healthy environment and the happier hustle, we still need to do all these things. But when you have this conversation, you're like, okay, guys, I'm dealing with cancer, I'm dealing with a divorce, I'm dealing with whatever. Again, being deeply invested in your people. Or maybe you don't have any of that and you're like, I do not want to do networking events. That's not my jam. That's not my thing. But like, great, you're off the hook. And when you clarify and verify it, then you don't really have to even worry about protecting your boundaries and what have you. But maybe you're listening to this and you never had this conversation. You're just new to this strategy that Casey's teaching us today. So you might be like, oh my God, thank you. You're speaking to me. I don't like the networking events. And I keep saying yes. I resent them. I'm coming home exhausted. Once again, I'm come back to my family and they're like, just quit that job. Every Tuesday night, you have to go to that workshop. You have to go to that blah, blah, blah. And we're trained
Mhm.
that you can't say no because you're going to look like you're not a team player. I will get phone calls all the time. Susie Q doesn't go to the luncheons. They don't want to go to the bowling happy hour on the first Friday of every month. They never show up at it. They're not a team player. I'm like, bullshit. That does not mean they are not a team player. Have you had a conversation with them? Do you know how they're hardwired? Do you know what they're dealing with? Do you know that the crippling anxiety that it creates for them to go there, they physically couldn't even go if they wanted to? Are they doing their work? Oh my goodness. Yes, they're an amazing paralegal. They run circles around everyone. Are they making you money? Oh my goodness. Yes. Are they giving you freedom and everything? Oh my goodness. Yes. They're wonderful at that, but they don't go to the thing. Like, hello. So I love just knowing yourself and communicating that. So maybe you're in the thick of, I don't know how to have the conversation. Because I love what you said, saying no. A lot of times I think as employees, we feel like if we say no, like a lot of times people have hardy time for it to even come out of their mouth because it like stings them. They're like, oh no, like trauma response, what's going to happen? Am I going to get beaten? Am I going to be
Mhm.
abandoned? Am I going to be kicked out? Am I going to be fired? And then our head goes to the dark side of town, right?
Right. 100%. Am I a bad employee? Am I not a team player? Am I all these stories that we bring with us come into play? But no is a completely acceptable answer. And we just don't use it enough. So it's hard though, because then somebody will object that no, and it's sticking to it and sticking to like, no, like I'm prioritizing my children right now, or Monday's bowling, it doesn't align with me taking self-care, and these little things that they it slowly gets chipped away when we keep saying yes to the things that we don't want to do.
Right. And so identifying them, communicating them, having confidence and kindness and respect for yourself and the other person, the thing, and sticking to them and setting them. And when you just said that to me, or just said that, you know what came to my mind? So you don't want to go to the happy hour. You don't want to go the networking thing and what have you. Like truly, it's just not in you. But
Yeah.
however, there is a need to have connection with your coworkers and things of that nature. So I'm always like, there's that definitive, this does not resonate with me. It causes me anxiety and what have you. But here's another option. So you might say, if that's not you, and say, I really truly don't want to leave my kids at night. They are 5 and 3 at any given time. And I'm telling y'all as listeners, if that's a case, do not put work before your family. Trust me, my kids are empty nesters. I just moved Ella out last week and went to college. And if I could take it all back, all of the networking things that I
Mhm.
did at night or the business trips that I went to and what have you, I would. It's not an either or, it can be an and where you're like, that's just, I'm not going to do that. I don't want to do that. And in fact, have a conversation if you're interviewing with a new position, or if you're doing your quarterly reviews and this resonate with you, go back and renegotiate and communicate where your non-negotiables are, where your boundaries are, but also make a suggestion. I know it's important for us all to be connected. I love working here. I love our clients. I love my coworkers or what have you. Can we have a working lunch instead? I'm just not giving up my nights and weekends. And that's a non-negotiable.
Right. And that's a boundary, because if you're in a season of life where you do have young children, you want to be there with them. And that is the thing about, they're only about kids. They're only going to be that age for so long.
Yes.
And you can't get that time back. You
Yes.
can't go backward ever.
Oh my gosh, right. And before we move on to number three, embracing change, I do
Mhm.
want to say something that I'm really sensitive and I'm present to. So for anybody listening to this, I want to say something. now in this day and age where we are hiring overseas and virtual assistants and what have you in the Philippines and Honduras and by and large the Philippines. And we have many people in this program, including my VA, Ria. So you all hear me gush about her constantly. She works for me. She's in the Philippines. And I know this because I've worked with other people from part-time and a couple hours here and there, that in Philippines, as a culture, it is ingrained in us to never disappoint anyone. It is ingrained in us to, and when I say us, because I'm loving the culture. I know AJ's here with us today. He's in the Philippines. I've had conversations with him about this. And so it is ingrained in them to, what Ria has told me and other people, that they're afraid to leave their computer because they're afraid they're going to come back again, a trauma response, and have a job and been fired. And it's so real as a culture. That's the expectation, and to constantly work. So Ria, I'm constantly having as early as this morning. So we're walking into the Labor Day holiday here in the US, things that nature. Last week there were Philippine holidays. And I love it because I'm constantly having to provide this platform her as an entrepreneur, as a leader, as a business owner. It's up to us to pay attention to that. And so today I'm like, okay, Ria, I'll see you on Tuesday. And she said, I'm not working on Monday. I said, she goes, it's on a holiday here. Like, I have your permission to not work on Monday. I'm like, Ria, you have my permission to be honest and to clarify with me constantly, but I have a big job in front of me to retrain her that her job is not to sit by the computer. That when she'll say to me, I'll schedule something, and I say to her, you need to remind me this is 2 a.m. your time. I don't expect you to do this at 2 a.m. unless it's going to support you and get your goals. It works within your family, because she likes to work at night as well. It's going to help you reach your bonus, which will make you happier and healthier. But you are not a sacrificial lamb. And that's my message for anyone who thinks this is a US based conversation. It's not. We made the decision to hire people overseas. We made the decision to hire virtual assistants or what have you. It is our duty to grow them up, coach them up into becoming people that really feel empowered and have the permission and the voice to understand how to conquer obstacles and to propose solutions and to calm us down and say, time out, let's chip away at this one time, to have boundaries and to have the permission to declare them, voice them, set them, stick to them, all the things. So I just really felt because so often I will hear people say, oh, my VA in the Philippines or whatever, they can run circles around, blah, blah, blah. They'll work, they say yes to everything. And if that's the case, no, as a leader, it is our duty to grow them up, coach them up, to give them these skill sets that really, truly every human being needs to learn, because this is why we walk around with so much trauma and anxiety and depression, and the list is on, right?
100%. And I'll give a very real example that I just set with my assistant, who she's a virtual assistant, but she's in the US. I know she's moving next month. And I told her, I said, let me know how much time you need. If you need the whole week before and after, just let me know so I can prepare, so you can do your job and I can do mine, and take the time you need. I go, moving is stressful, it's hard, it takes a lot of time. And I go, and I'm not going to add more to your plate, because I know together we can work through this before that happens and after. I'm like, nothing is that important to get done immediately if we just plan and prepare a little bit. But I wanted to give her that, to know, like, your job is not going to be at stake because you need time off to move.
Oh my goodness. I love that. And as you were saying that, and that we'll talk about embracing change, but think about that conversation that you had. So at your young, tender age, Casey, you are so wise. And I know, a lot of what you went through contributes to that and what have you. But the leader, the future leader you get to be, and I'm going to be an extremist about this. Like, I don't ever want to get a message or find out that somebody I employed, because sadly, that has been the case where I was in the hustle and what have you, running organizations or what have you, and then finding out that somebody got sick or somebody got divorced or somebody, I have a law firm right now where that literally two people, two attorneys died, have literally
Oh my,
passed away. And now are they the cause of it? No, I'm not being that extreme, but at end of the day, like, I kind of like to be an extremist, to be a calling and an invitation for us. We don't understand. I don't want to look back and hear that Bob, had a heart attack and they worked for me for 15 years, and how they never took a vacation, how they went through a divorce and what have you. It's like, did I do everything I could as a leader to do the questions like
right,
that? Hey, you're moving in 2 weeks. Let's talk about it. Let's plan it to reduce the stress. Even by 1% can change everything.
right. And it can make someone else's life so much easier. And that's kindness on both parties, like kindness towards your employee, because it shows that you appreciate them and that we all know like our personal lives impact our work lives and our work lives impact our personal life.
And our
So
health.
we, right. So like, just those small examples are huge for
Yeah.
others.
And guess what's going to happen when your gal comes back after that move? Like, she is going to be on fire and cannot wait to get back to work because she had that time and attention to unpack. And because she didn't have this stress, like, let me unpack the kitchen, then run to and do email and then do these phone calls, and having all this stress while she's unpacking and has that time, she's going to come back to the next call. I always talk about the power of the pause. And she's going to show up on Monday morning, be like, Casey, all right, thank you. I had a great time unpacking. Thank you for giving me that time off. Now, let me tell you, I was thinking about this problem and this problem and this problem, and I want to talk to you about this, because I think I have some solutions for it. Because as they're unpacking, they don't have this like crippling stress. And then they're coming back and they have this freedom of space and they're so excited and can't wait to get back to work because they're so grateful for you for creating this environment.
Right. Right. They want to be on your team even more.
Yes. Oh my goodness. And just show up and crush it. So talk to us about embracing change.
So I believe that we are here to grow and evolve over our entire lifetime. I realized that after my cancer journey, I couldn't be the same person I was before because I was ultimately going to end up in the same position again. And I didn't want to go through that again. So I believe that this was the universe's way of saying, like, you need to adapt and you need to evolve from what you were doing and how you were thinking, because clearly this is the way I am showing you. And so I was like, I got the message. I'm changing everything. Well, not everything, but a lot of it. And it wasn't overnight, but I do believe like we have to adapt and we have to evolve. Like you were referencing earlier, like how we shouldn't be in those um, that same mentality and that mindset of we need to be tied to our desk 24/7 and we can never leave and we have to work, 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 hustle, hustle, hustle. Like our lives are very different now than they were 20, 30 years ago. Not that that was okay then, but it's very different now with everything that we have going on and mental health being such at the forefront and realizing like what they were doing 30 years ago probably wasn't great.
Right.
And how that's impacted generations as a result. And, you know, to we want to think like, and I hear this from my dad, I'm too old to change. Like, no, we're all changing every day. You just don't realize it. You just really like the way you're living and you don't want to change until you have to change.
Oh my
And
goodness.
it's
I
like,
love that statement. Oh, people say that all the time, and I'll put myself in that classification too, but I'm too old to change or what have you, or I'll hear she or he never going to change. But think about it. Like, how much have we changed since 2020? Like, there were old people who never knew what a Zoom room was. They never knew what, maybe didn't even have a smartphone or what have you. And what did their grandchildren teach them out of fun? Right. And
right.
so, and then you're like, you just changed. So it's the mindset around that. I love that. That's an invitation. So for employees, first and foremost, like I love Casey, what you're saying, because you need to, you're not the same person that you were 18 or 20 or what have you. But when you are on a path of growth, shifting your mindset around that, you are in the business of change. So I always propose a question of like, what's 1% that I could learn that I could shift today? I know that I typically walk in and I'm like, how are you? And I'm like, rah, 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 rah. No, like no more. I'm not going to do that anymore. Or if you're an attorney and you're seeing high turnover constantly, people quitting,
Mhm.
you're constantly frustrated with your team. Nobody wants to do their job. No one works as hard as you, expecting frustration, disappointment. Where do you need to really take a hard look at you're the common denominator? And just really looking at that as an evolution over time. So often employees will tell me, we always change everything. We're growing too fast. We're moving things fast. Like, that's a gift. Gamification, have fun with it. What can you learn? How can you personally grow? If you're white knuckling to structure consistently and what have you, you're creating that stress for yourself, being playful and having fun with it and being curious about how you can grow. I just had this conversation, then we'll move on to the next one with an attorney who wants to make a change here, growing so fast. And I had a call with her and she goes, I need your help. The person who's been with me since day one, I want to make changes to our squads and no longer everyone's doing everything. I want this to be I want this to be during, I want this to be closing of files, and I want to segregate it and make squads and what have you. And she's freaking out. She goes, can you help me how I can navigate this conversation where I came literally use this word. I want to change something to their mind going to a place that they're being fired. And that is
Mm,
really true. When we want to change something and we want to take something away from you that is giving you space and freedom. So you're not working 80 hours a week. Like, I'm actually being an amazing conscious boss and leader for you. But the employee, and I think you're going to tell me what the answer is. I'm like, that's a trauma response, right?
right. I mean, adaptation, we do it every day. We don't realize it. And, you know, it's how you frame that change, which really can make the difference. Like,
Oh.
we're adapting to this new form of how we're practicing together because I want us to be more efficient and effective. And ultimately, this change that I'm bringing about is going to help us all be better at our jobs that we're really good at already. And embracing that and showing them and everyone around you how you can do that and just thinking about it in a very different way.
I love that you said that, because maybe it's just even coming up with new language, because that word
Mhm.
might be a trauma or a trigger response for someone. And it is true. I've talked about this for years of like, what do you think about enhancing or up leveling or shifting or refining versus change? That could make all the
Okay.
difference in the world, right?
Right. Even just as small as like adapting instead of like, or trying, even the word trying, we're going to try something different. Like, it doesn't mean like that now we're shifting everything it's set in stone. Like, if you figure out a year from now, it's not working the way you had planned, like, if you don't look at it as like we're trying, like you ultimately are going to set yourself up to be like, well, it's so concrete. We changed everything and now we have to do it again. Like, oh, but it versus like, oh, we tried this thing and it didn't work. And so we're going to try this other thing.
Mm.
Very different in how it even feels saying it.
Yeah. So whether, and it doesn't let you off the hook if you're like, well, the person didn't use all the words that Casey said I should use. So now I get to be stuck in my grouchy and being righteous about it. It's for you to even your inner dialogue to really embrace it and have fun with it and seeing the growth as a growth opportunity and good and like let's have fun with this and explore what this might look like, right?
Right. Right. Just even like how you frame that and propose it to everyone makes a huge difference.
Okay, so we talked about conquering obstacles. We talked about boundaries. We talked about embracing change and having fun with even the terminology if it's a trigger for you. Talk about inner resilience.
So I think that we all have the ability to adapt when we don't want to, right? Like anybody who's going through a serious illness or divorce, you're adapting to that change already. The resilience comes from how you respond to that adaptation, right? Like, how do you get back up when you've fallen? How do you recover after a divorce or an illness or your child going through something that you have zero control over? How do you show up every single day? And and maybe that is the resiliency piece, is just like knowing that you're human and going, today I'm alive and I'm getting up and I'm just going to tackle one problem at a day or at a time today, because we don't give ourselves enough credit for what we do every single day, especially women. Women do everything and they never give themselves credit for it. Like, if I went to anybody right now, any woman, even just stranger off the street, and asked, what did you accomplish yesterday? They'd be like, oh, nothing. But no, okay, so what did you do yesterday? And then they have like a laundry list. It's like, you didn't even acknowledge the things that you just did. Are you kidding me? Like, that to me is like, well, if we don't acknowledge it, we can't even see what we're doing. Like, there's
Inspiration.
a right, because that resiliency is like us getting up every single day, doing the things that we know we're supposed to do and have to do, but then also we get to do. But that resiliency is like, you're not just like hiding under the covers and wanting to just like pretend nothing's happening. Like, so you've got all this stuff going on, the it going on personally, professionally, but every day you're getting up and you're facing that challenge, that it the
Um,
best way you can. That's
I love
resilient.
I love that you call it inner resilience too, Casey, because when, I hear resilience and tenacity and what have you, it's just like, just buckle up and show up and fake it till you make it and white knuckle it and just plow through. And I think, but I love that inner resilience and what you're saying of, what can you celebrate from today? Nothing. What did you accomplish today? What are you so proud of what you did today? Nothing. Because we're coming from a place of the stuff that we didn't get done. But I love when you're like, what did you do? And then it's like boom, 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 boom. You're like, are you serious? And they're like, oh, that was only before lunch. Like, I haven't gotten to after lunch yet, right?
Right. Like, and so that's what I teach. It's one of my core values with my clients is, what's the win? Because we're going through massive amounts of poop, right? Physically, mentally, emotionally. So like, where's the win? Like, celebrate, you got up today, you showered today, you did all these things today, but we don't ever acknowledge that we do it. Well,
Mm.
how can we create our own inner resilience if we're not even acknowledging the things that we're doing?
Oh my goodness. This is so funny because I was with my daughter at the pool over the weekend and there's a friend that is Negative Nancy, and I always make the mistake of saying, "How are you?" Most people will greet someone and say, "How are you
Yeah.
today?" or "How are you?" Right? And my daughter Ella goes, "Mom, stop asking people how they are. Why don't you greet them?" And we had this great conversation about this. She goes, "Why don't you greet them and say, 'What's your win from today?'" And stop
Mm.
asking people how they are, because people are like, "Oh my God, I'm terrible. My kids, blah, blah." And like by and large, the average bear is judging from what they didn't get done, what they weren't able to accomplish, and coming from their not enough isms, or how they're the victim to whatever their boss or their clients or whatever did. Like, and maybe just greeting from that place. What's your win from today? That's like kind of that inner resilience in a way that I think that you can. I love that you train your clients like there's always something to celebrate.
Always. And we just don't acknowledge it ever. And
Oh,
so giving that back to them, that ownership of like, yeah, I did, like, this is what I did. And pretty soon they're not just stacking up one win, they're stacking up a laundry list of wins instead of like, well, I didn't get the laundry done and I didn't get, doesn't matter
right, right.
because they're not looking at it like that anymore. Their mindset is completely shifting around all the things that they've not done that day. And it's a massive, it can be massively potent when you need it.
And as you're saying this, and I know, studying your work and meeting with you prior to recording today, one of the things is that it's a building block, because when you come from that place of inner resilience, inner celebration, and the shifting around the mindset, which I know you many of your courses, and we're going to tell our listeners how they can find out of how the power of thought is so incredible. But it's a building block going back to that embracing change, where you're like, when you come from this place of inner resilience and celebration, and what's your win versus how are you, where it's just a trauma dump. Then when something embracing of the change, and like, oh, I started my day, or I'm consistently come from a place that's in a resilience and celebration. So when the attorney or someone comes to you and has this idea for enhancement, refinement, change, whatever terminology we use, you're like, oh my God, how fun, because I'm so connected and present to how I was able to do this that I never thought I could do, or how I was able to do this, this, and this yesterday or before lunch today. So yeah, let's do it. I have the capacity, I have the confidence, I have the wherewithal, I have the resilience to be able to do it. So now change doesn't feel so heavy and hard and soul sucking.
Right. Because if you're always growing, you're always evolving and
Mm.
changing, it's adapting to the new day. Like I start off every day with today's a great day. But it doesn't mean that that's going to happen. But I'm going to carry that mindset with like it's not poop yet. So it's a great day until it becomes poop. And
Love
then we
that.
pick up the pieces.
I love that. Talk about number 5, strength as a mindset of endurance.
It is. I think, that is one thing that I don't think we as a society have a lot of. Like, we are in a marathon of life. We cannot give up at the first challenge or obstacle at the first mile marker. Just because we didn't expect it and it didn't go perfectly doesn't mean that we cannot pick ourselves back up. No matter if it's a conversation or a health crisis or a divorce. Like you can adapt negatively or positively. And that's your mind telling you that. That isn't that isn't anything but your own self. And I am so I am my worst enemy sometimes. I have to get out of my own way because
Yes.
it goes back to that like, oh, I'm the problem. I'm looking at this as a negative when I should be looking at this as an opportunity to do things differently. every challenge is an opportunity to do things differently.
It really is. I think it's David Goggins who talks a lot about David Goggins, he has that book out, You Can't Hurt Me, and what have you. I mean, he's extreme talk about like the hustle culture. But one of the things that I love that he teaches about is what you're saying about the mind. And he says a mind will give up something like 40% more before your body will, or before the
Right.
action. So he uses that for physical when you're running or
Hmm.
whatever challenge, but also for your mental. And as you were saying that, like the divorce or the cancer or whatever comes for us personally, so often I'll have people walk in and say, I need to quit. I can't do the job and do this and do that and what have you. And so often, like as business owners and entrepreneurs, we're like, oh my gosh, yes, okay, absolutely. I'll support you in that. I'll help you find my replacement, what have you. I'm like, did you ask what they need? Like, do you have any idea like how that might kill them? Like being a purpose maker and a difference maker? Did you have the conversation to say, does it really mean quitting for you? Like you love your job, you're good at your job. I see you light up for this. So what can we do differently? Do you want to work from home? Do you want to go down to part-time? What would make you happy to be able to heal your heart, heal your body, heal your spirit, and feel like a difference maker where it just like it doesn't have to be so overwhelming that I can't do this, but how can you have everything you want? Because the purposeful work will help heal you in other ways so you don't feel like, my job is to just go sit in bed all day, right? That's what I'm
Right.
saying.
Yeah, 100%. And I think it's all about how we get to see how we see it. Doesn't mean just because the situation's happening to us doesn't mean we are that situation, and disconnecting that ownership. Like, yes, I went through cancer. I don't have cancer though. I never had cancer. I went through battling with cancer. Yes, I had disease. I was sick. I never used the language of I am cancer because it's not true. So, like, even just like giving yourself a step back to not take ownership of the situation. Like, I'm a divorcee. No, I'm going through a divorce, a uncoupling of a relationship that served its purpose and no longer does.
It's,
Even looking at the language we use is so important for our mind.
oh my goodness. I love that. So the strength is a mindset of endurance. And we all need that, and finding someone to give that to you. So, as leaders, even for our clients, many of our law firms do family law. Imagine how adopting all of this and really this whole training today on how to get through it, you can adopt it for you. Talk about being an impact maker, talk about changing the world, like even in our own little. So, it starts with us. Oh, conquering the obstacles, boundaries, embracing change, inner resilience, and celebration. I'm going to add that part to it. And strength as a mindset of endurance.
Mhm.
And how you, if you do it with yourself, then have the courage to do it within your law firm and communicate that, like, we need some boundaries here, attorney. I want to talk about what's not working for me. I want to talk about the stress. I want to talk about how I'm going home crying every night. I want to talk about, and let's find the win. Let's find that we're able to do this. And then you get to use this exact same thing with your clients because all of you are dealing with heavy and hard stuff. There's a tremendous amount of heartbreak. There's a tremendous amount of trauma. There's a tremendous amount of abuse, whether it's elder abuse for your mother in the nursing home, or it's the divorce, or it's whatever it might be where you're at. And so, really being able to bring it, start with you, then into your law firm with your leader, transforming the toxic culture, and then moving it to the place where your clients are the beneficiary of that, right?
Right. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. So Casey, tell our listeners how they can connect with you.
So I'm on Instagram and Facebook as at The Happier Hustle. And I also have a website, and you can email me through the website, but it's Casey at thehappierhustle.com. It's always going to be me responding. Mindset is something that everyone, mental health right now is so important with everything that's happened. But having a strong mindset to be able to tackle not just a career, but life and a career together is so essential to living a really beautiful, long life that you love.
Thank you. I am so grateful for you. I'm going to have it in the show notes, put it in the chat, put it in the back end of the academy, the Happier Hustle. Casey, again, you have some amazing downloads on your website for ways to reduce fear and anxiety. There's many different trainings that you have on there, no shortage of resources. And again, for those of you that are just popping in today's training, I just want to remind you, go back and listen to today's training, because the whole conversation, the whole coaching was how to get through it. And I love it because there's always an it. There's always an it. It's always an it professionally. And it's a matter of having a strategy to be able to navigate it and having common language within the law firm, within the business. So we don't ever have to get to the place of creating a toxic culture, accepting a toxic culture. And if you're just joining, you want to go back and look at the definition of it, because it's not what you think. And then really how to really transform that from a place of inside our law firm, but also wherever you go, there you are in a personal life as well, and be able to hold this space for that. So Casey, thank you. Thank you for today. I know we went a bit over, but so important. And I cannot thank you enough for being here.
Well, thank you for having me. I'm very grateful to be able to share just a little bit of it with you.
Yes, keep up the groundbreaking work. You are a difference maker and a transformer.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
All right. See you next time.
Bye.
We've reached the end of yet another episode of the Hire and Empower with Molly McGrath podcast, where dream teams of entrepreneurs in an entrepreneur's world really do come true. Listen, whether you're a business owner, employee, executive, or hiring manager, we fully understand hiring, onboarding, and leadership is expensive, exhausting, often overwhelming, and absolutely time-consuming for the already taxed professional. Well, we have your back on all fronts. For 25 years and counting, we have transformed over 4,000 law firm teams into the most efficient, resourceful, and profitable asset of your business. Check out our Smart Hire solution, our employee leadership program, and the 66-day law firm turnaround at hiringandempowering.com.